That's my vibe on what our intro is. Sort of Welcome to the PureJoy podcast, a bi-weekly exploration of joys that we feel amongst ourselves and through our guests. Hi, I'm Gabe Stringer, here with our special guest, our usual host, M. Williams, here to explore his joy. Finally, here in front of a camera and microphone.
A year in,
here is M. Williams, here to talk about his joy. I'm so excited. I'm Gabe Stringer one more time to interview M. Williams about his joy. M, can you please enlighten us about your joy?
Well, let's start with our daily joys first.
That's true.
Our small joy of the day. Let's warm up into it.
We gotta do part one of the episode. Here it is. Our small joys. Do you want to go first, guest?
Yeah, I'll go first.
All right. What's your small joy of the day?
My small joy of the day is actually me and my partner went out earlier and we saw The Little Mermaid, live action Little Mermaid.
Oh yeah, how was that?
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah,
I don't have a lot of feelings about The Little Mermaid. I only have seen, obviously, the animated one. How does it?
I don't know.
How does it hold up? How does it compare?
I don't know that I had a ton of feelings. I've always enjoyed the like smash hit songs from The Little Mermaid, but I don't know that I've had a ton of like. There's really like a lot of the old Disney movies that I enjoy, but I'm not like. I don't ache to go back and watch again. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But So it's an hour longer than the animated version, but I would say that I didn't really notice that it was a little over 2 hours long. Like
it just kept going.
Just
like
a good movie.
It kept you
all
going.
Of the scenes were like necessary. I was excited to kind of watch it, going into it knowing that like, why is it an hour longer? And that I think is just because like in real time you need time to build the scenes more than you do in animated. You got to let people enter the room. You got to let people. Hello, cat. Are you here to join?
Hey, welcome, Finnegan.
You gotta let people warm up to the scenes, and then some you just want to give a little bit more time because you're just willing to accept things in animation more than in, I think, real time. So it was really good. All of the characters were really stellar. I was really surprised to see like Melissa McCarthy do such a good job as Ursula. That was just neat. I was expecting it. I mean, it was about as comical as you would have want to make it, but it still had this like dark side to it. It was good. It was good. All songs were stellar. Even the only part I didn't particularly love is the bird talking underwater as much as it does. It exists underwater for so long. I'll agree it could maybe go under there, and if everyone else can already like talking animals, whatever, it can talk. I don't give a fuck. But it was underwater for like 5 to 7 minutes, and I do not think the bird can do that.
You've heard it here first, folks. The bird in Little Mermaid was under the water for too long.
Too long.
Hot take here on the PureJoy podcast. The bird was underwater for too long, and we can't have that.
It was
only critique.
The audience was literally like other people in the audience were chuckling the first time we started talking underwater because it was just kind of goofy.
Stellar movie. Still a good character. Decent
she
movie,
did a great job with
good
the character.
The bird was underwater.
Underwater for far too long. Scientifically inaccurate in the movie The Little Mermaid.
But it did look like a real bird. It did look like a real bird that was just underwater for too long.
The mermaids looked like there was one point where she was sitting and you could just see this muscle on her tail and the way it went down, and I was like, that's really cool. Like that looks like the muscle and not just legs under something.
Okay.
You know, and there was just like little moments where she like they would move their tails and it really looked like a muscle under the scales doing what it had to do. But again, the bird was just under the water for too long.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
On my end, my small joy, I recently noticed that I have bookmarked quite a lot of songs on Shazam. You know how Shazam has like it connects to your like network or your
No, I don't really know
your
about
like
Shazam.
buttons. Okay, well Shazam has a button that you can add to your like lock screen when you slide down, where you can like real quick Shazam a song.
Oh, okay. Find out the name of a song just by hearing a bit
real quick.
Okay.
And so I have had that. It turns out I've had that for over a year. And I listen to a lot of podcasts, some of which are like just let's play some songs podcasts. And I'm on the road a lot, so I don't have time to fucking look up all the songs
Sure.
that are playing while I'm driving. And so I just quick Shazam and
It saves it to the
forget
little
that it
history.
happened.
Yeah.
And so today I realized that I had been doing that and went back and just started listening through all of the songs I'd Shazammed.
Okay.
They don't hold up, most of them. Most of them don't. I don't know if that is an issue with my selection of the songs or if Shazam has picked not the songs that I actually selected. But
Or
I
maybe
would
there's
say
a different vibe to listening to them on the road when it's just sort of there.
It's super possible that
And-
like my road trip vibes are not my sitting in the kitchen listening to music vibes. But I spent a good time today just sort of listening to a lot of those tunes. It was a lot of Irish and Celtic music, and then a little bit of electro funk, a little bit. But I would say I had maybe a 30-40% acceptance rate.
Wow.
Yeah.
Of the music that you bookmarked. That's
Of the
wild.
music that I bookmarked, I went back and listened to it and was like, oh,
That's pretty
man,
wild.
Okay.
That's interesting. I mean, it's like my like really long playlist. I would say that the songs near the beginning of it or closer to the beginning when they come up, I skip them much more often.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's because or like, you know,
I
even newer songs, I'm like, why did I add
feel
this?
that.
You
I
know?
definitely feel that when I'm listening through playlists that have been extant since college. Occasionally you'll get a song and you'll be like, what? What? I know that Gabe of 5 years ago was really into this song in college, but he was in a very different place, and I don't know about that.
Gabe of 5 years now hates this song.
Gabe of 5 years from now has analyzed the lyrics and has decided that he's not as big of a fan of the song as he thought he was. He was a big fan of the tune.
There's a good ditty in the background.
Way on back, but now that he's like looked at the lyrics, he's like, maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not. With that out of the way, let's get into the meat and potatoes of our recording. If you would please enlighten us on the topic of our episode. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So for me, there's a number of things in life I think that bring me joy. I think that some I could talk about for hours, and others would be like, well, it brings me joy, and that's about it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I find that I'm happy when I do it, but I don't know that I could talk about it much longer. But I think that the root of many of these, not all of them, but many of them comes back to storytelling for me. Be that, I mean, streaming, like playing these games and finding the stories of them, playing D&D, the podcast, like it's all circling around, I think, in the end to just like having a story to tell, whether that's someone else's story that we're experiencing together or a story that I'm making up myself. Most of the time I think it's preferable that it's a story that like I'm making up or being a part of making up. Yeah, I don't know. It's just since we decided that this was coming up, I've been a lot more thoughtful about like what I would be doing. I think at some point it was going to be D&D, and then at some point it was going to be podcasting. And now that I've had guests that have done them, and while I'm not averse to repeating, it's also made me think a little bit more about how I would approach doing these things.
And I'd say that just my estimation, but a lot of the topics that you would pick, given of the topics that we've seen here in the podcast, a lot of the topics that you would be inclined towards do sort of have their root in storytelling. Yeah. Whether it is Dungeons and Dragons or theater or any number of things that you would be excited about. they come back to storytelling.
I mean, yeah, 100%. All of these things have, I think, begun with an enjoyment in the way that it lets me either tell a story or experience a story.
So this being the Pure Joy podcast, let's talk about joy in sort of conjunction with your topic for a second. What was the first time that you were experiencing storytelling and you felt like this is a joy? I am experiencing joy
Yeah,
in this moment via storytelling, be it your own or someone else's or
no doubt.
pre-written or like what, talk to me about your first sort of storytelling experience.
There's one before this that it just involves me like reading a book to a grade that was younger than me. I was like in first grade and I was reading a book upside down to a bunch of kindergartners, and I remember enjoying imparting this story. But there's one time, I think it was probably also in first grade, maybe around the same time in which I had written like, I mean, the story is tainted by age at this point, but I'd written like this probably like 5 to 6 page story about the beginnings of some form of adventure. A group of adventurers come together.
How old were you at this point?
Well, like first grade.
Okay,
Late
okay.
first grade. What is that? That's 7, 8?
Something like that, yeah.
Somewhere around there.
First grade. People know first grade.
So yeah, I'd done this and I had enjoyed it. I mean, I took my own free sort of leeway with what I wrote. I put a couple curse words in there. Was very excited. Oh, indeed. When I was finished with this, maybe book one, maybe chapter one of a longer thing, I was so excited about this new world, and it went deeper than just the 6 pages. I made a board game of this thing, this little journey that you could go on and draw cards, probably more akin to a Candyland than anything.
And
right?
this was all first grade that you did this?
Yeah. So we're playing the board game in class one day, and the teacher comes over and is interested in the board game that the first grader made, and the story goes on to where it came from, and she was like, "Oh, I really want to read this story," and then she took it away because there were curse words in it. She took it all away and said, "You can have it back at the end of the year." And me
That's
being
brutal.
who I am and also a first grader would never remember this thing again. I'll remember it in a moment where I can't retrieve it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I never ever got that back, but it be like that's probably my first attempt at story writing. My imagination's always been great. I've always been into like the pretend on my own with a stick in the woods, you know? But I think that would be like that's like time number one, and since then I think everything, I mean, thinking back, like since then every decision I've made about what my future would be at any given moment has kind of involved storytelling. When I was in like middle school to high school, my plan was to be a video game designer, and I was like writing, I had all these little notebooks of the chunks of video games that I had designed, and it was all around like I remember chatting with a friend who was helping me at some point. We were like talking about how the beginning of a game is so important and how it brings you into this world and the story we're telling. Didn't do that. I went into theater instead, and still like storytelling. My favorite class in college was playwriting. Like that one, or what's the 481 we did, device theater. Again though, like storytelling in a different kind. Those are the classes that stuck the most with me because I did them, and I did them to a level that there's not a lot of other things I've done. I feel the like thing that came out, it may not be the most glorious piece of writing, but it was better than I thought I was going to do by far at that time. And I think that if I was, or am able to continue to nurture that, it's just going to continue to get better for what I think is going to come out of whatever we're doing. Yeah, I don't know. It's just continued. It's consistent and evolving. We did the little Pokemon stuff, and I remember at that time I was at work when we were making the beginning of that Pokemon game, just like in my notebook, drawing maps. My boss told me to put my notebook away because I had taped pages together, and it could unfold into a larger map that I could draw on.
Hell yeah.
And he was upset, understandably,
yeah,
that I had pulled out this map and was like mapping at work. And now we find ourselves in D&D. So it's just kind of like full circle, always storytelling.
Yeah. You were talking about storytelling in your late high school, sort of early college days, what was the first time that you yourself, because it sounds like you sort of experienced storytelling. You had stories told to you and you were sort of a part of telling stories. What was the first time that you sort of felt like you had told a story, that you had done the storytelling?
I think actually it was when I was actually talking with my partner about this today. And I was in a show. I was the light in Samuel Beckett. It was Samuel Beckett's show. Um,
Let's
if I remember the name of it, but I was in it.
You were in it, and what were you
Nonetheless.
doing?
I was the light in the show. So this show, as a Samuel Beckett, difficult to really get down to the nitty gritty of what's going on. But basically, there are three forces on stage, and each telling this story. One was the man involved in the story, and the other were the two ladies in this like love triangle, and they're all all the work we had done, we got down to that they're all dead and they're trying to explain their story to death. And me as the light shining, the only light in the audience, was shining the light on whoever was speaking. But it wasn't just shining light on whoever's speaking. I have to direct the motion, right? Like this person can't stop speaking until the light leaves them, and this person can't start speaking until the light leaves them. Even though we know in the script this person stops at what, and this person then goes next. But like if you don't have that motion, if you don't have that feeling, if this person just starts talking and the lights here, they're pushing action, right?
Mm-hmm.
The audience knows that they're driving the show.
Mm-hmm.
But if I am able to keep this up and force their attention now over here, and then now this person stammers to begin their and firing out what they're saying, and then has to like trip up to stop because I've ended a word early or whatever, then it like is really driving the action. I really like never did it right in show, but there was a few times during practice where when we crushed it, I was like, this is my show. I'm in it. I am the actor, but like
Okay.
it could not exist without what I'm doing. And also like it felt very hard. It felt very difficult, and I felt I had to overcome some wild hurdle in getting to this point where I was shining this light on these three people, right?
And we're gonna get back to your chronology, but I do want to ask before we do that, what, like, have you felt that in your experience of storytelling, sort of beyond that first instance? Have you felt that moment where you're like, I am the storyteller, I am the one dictating
Yeah.
the beats of this story? Have you felt that later on in life?
Yeah, I mean, it would be the preceding years doing playwriting. I wouldn't say it was probably in another show that happened, but playwriting was huge because there was a couple things that I wrote where like it was really cool sharing it with the class of, a small group that like we're all trying to sure gas each other up, but like produce the best work that they could. And so that was a part of it, and just like being at the table and revealing these pieces that I put a lot of effort into, countless sleepless nights, which was already happening, but now I just have to write a story on top of that. Thinking to myself like, whatever, I'm just excited to turn this in and be done with another fucking project so I can move on to the next thing. And then people were like, holy shit, that's really good, or this part was really moving, the rest could have used more work. I'm like, oh sure, yeah. I didn't do anything, but
But this part, though.
this part, right? And so it just like all of those moments in playwriting, device theater was huge with it because it was this sort of group think about coming up with the story that we all wanted to tell at the same time, and how we could do that. It was always interesting because I am very hands-on. I got to have a lot of control in whatever projects I'm working on.
Mhm.
And that is a type of art where you can't really, if you are, it's no longer what it's supposed to be, which is this like, I don't know, group think production, group think product. So like giving yourself over to the like nature of what the storytelling can be is interesting too. I think then mostly it's just set with D&D since they introduced us to D&D, because I knew that I can literally tell any story I want. Just have to set it up just right.
So then taking it from the college years, I'm guessing, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, the moments where you have felt like you were a storyteller since then have been through role playing games or
Yeah. Yeah, I mean we had worked on the Pokemon game for a few months. We are making like a fan-made Pokemon game, and I was just over the moon with every little decision. We got two towns with a working flow of when you talk to this person, it changes this thing, and that's huge. Like such in minuscule little tweaks and changes fires off different arcs in the story, and that was just interesting. Even though we only got through these first few towns with like any story motion, and it still felt like a shell, was just interesting to like when it isn't a shell, it's already feeling super cool. But when it's not a shell anymore, it'll be gotta be so much better than it already is now. That has fallen off. It's just been the tabletop role playing games. It's so just interesting how the story develops there consistently amongst I don't know, kind of a group think thing too. It's got to be other people. It's not just the work that I put in or the work that anyone puts in it on the table. That's every decision that leads to this ultimate outcome.
for you, the listener, Em and I did work on a Pokemon fan make game. We didn't have a title in mind, like and subscribe the next decade. Fingers crossed. We'll see if we get it out there. It was based on Iceland. We got the first two towns made. We had man, it was so much fun. Like spitballing plot ideas and how things connected together. That was such a good time. Like just talking through and planning through the different things that things could be. And then
Yeah.
of course there was the D&D subscribe like and subscribe Dungeons, Drive-Ins and Dice. That is where we do our role-playing game content. We're currently playing Dungeon World out in space. We may in the near future be playing something else, but look forward to more storytelling elements there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow,
Yeah, I mean, but that's where I flex the storytelling muscles now is just in that. I'm a little nervous and excited to see how that will change when I'm not the DM.
yeah, that was gonna be, if I wasn't gonna pick a question off of here, that was gonna be my next question. Was what are your thoughts on storytelling? Sort of a behind the kimono peek for you in the audience. Um, Here in the near future, M will stop being our game master here for Dungeons, Drive-Ins, and Dice, and I will take over playing your old favorite Dungeons and Dragons.
D&D,
D
finally
and D. We
traditional
are
D&D.
back again with the 20-sided polyhedrals. What are your thoughts? Was going to be my question. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts moving from a game master, sort of architect of the overarching story of the pillars of the world, to a player character sort of pushing threads forward with your own actions? Sort of what are your thoughts
I
sort of making
mean,
that transition?
yeah, I don't know, cuz this is a like I think about it every night when I'm going to bed. That's like the thing I think about when I'm going to sleep is in between each session what could happen next. So right now we're where we've left off in our recordings, we're in the shadow of a ship. We've just done this interaction with some bandits in the field, right? Do we leave, do we not? I have gone through 7 we do leave scenarios and 5 we don't leave scenarios.
Oh
It's
dang.
just consistent because I not because I want to plan out what's going to happen. This it's just to see how the story could go if it goes in this direction, if it goes in this direction, if it goes in this direction. 99% of the times even with that you guys are going to do something of none of the 15 scenarios I've thought could happen. You guys are going to do one or two things that's going to ping pong you to a different area. But it's going to help that I've done all these things because now I have a better idea of this field of spaceships, right? Now I know, like, okay, maybe it doesn't need to be that you drove up and directly over to this thing, but this other thing that I had imagined I can kind of put over here, because it helps me develop out this little world I can just kind of rearrange as we go. But it's daily. That's all the time, because I'm loving what's happening and I want to keep fostering that to happen. When I move into a player, I don't know. I don't know how I will feel. I don't know if I'll be searching for another way to find a way to tell a story, or if the itch will still be scratched, because in editing, I'm pleased in a different way to see that it's not just me DMing and then you guys responding, but in this moment, I can see the story forming when I'm editing. So maybe it'll still exist because I'm still going through and editing the same content. I'm just not driving the boat per se anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm nervous and excited because I just want to play again.
Well, I will say, I as the Dungeon Master am looking forward to your feedback as far as the way that the story is progressing. Even if I am taking the lead in the sort of imagination portion of the world building, I will be very intrigued to hear your feedback as the architect of the medium, as it were, and to sort of hear what you have to say as your experience as a player, and as a listener as you're editing.
No, I'm excited to see how it changes. I have no idea. I'm excited. We've been telling a story, but I don't know that we've ever focused so hard on storytelling in playing any of the D&D games we've ever played.
No, we've just sort of been
done
doing
it.
our thing.
And that's fine. It's good and fun, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But it's been interesting thinking a lot more as a group about driving the story forward. You can still make the dumb ideas, make the fun, goofy bits, but still driving that story forward has been just so enjoyable.
Do you have a memory? I don't know if we've already answered this, and if we do, we'll move on to the next question. But
Sure.
Do you have a memory, like a crystallized, like this was the moment that you were like, this is a joy. This is a thing for me that I want to be doing forever, basically.
I don't know that I ever put the puzzle pieces together until I was actually sitting down and figuring out what to put on the podcast, like what to be a guest. Like I didn't really ever think about, like in first grade, I enjoyed doing this thing. I had found that people said good job and I loved what I did and I dove in further, but then it was gone. And then I was, game designing, and I never really thought about that it was the fact that I was finding so much enjoyment in coming up with these worlds, but I thought that it was through video games, like the structure of video games that I wanted to be, and easy to peter off, and then it's like through the structure of theater, and now it's through the structure of D&D, even up until like the past week when I've been thinking about it, like it boils down to the fact that I am telling a story and that I do think about it daily and that I like look forward to it. Like when I'm in bed, I'm on my phone, you're winding down, I'm like, ooh, about 15 minutes, I'm going to dive into another scenario that I'm just excited to dictate in my head what everyone does, what everyone says, where they go, what they do, and knowing that it'll be different when it actually happens. Becoming comfortable with that. At first, I was like, come on, what the fuck? How can it be different than 15 other scenarios? But it's like now exciting because it's this part of it. Like
It
that's
can always
how the
be different.
scenarios
Like the more
continue
that
to
you,
be.
the more you know your players, the more you know the characters that are acting independently within your story, the more different ways that things can spiral out of control, because oh, this one thing could be a trigger for this player to do this thing, and then that could go off in whatever direction.
Well, I haven't put words to it. I think that's
It's
what I've begun getting more excited about. And it was in like, I don't know, was it the third or fourth episode when we had the rug incident where you said, "Is there a rug in this factory?" And I said, "I can't think of reason why there would be." And you said, well, can you think of a reason why there wouldn't be? And then I said, I like faffed around and tried to come up with some reason there wouldn't be, and it ultimately resulted in no.
In the end, I did not get my rug.
You didn't get your
Spoiler
rug.
alert
And
for those who haven't heard the episode. I did not get my rug. Not salty at all about that.
Yeah, I'm salty about it that I had done that.
That character's already
in the
dead.
past. That sure, and that's also been revealed in real time now, so that can be said. But it's that there was no reason that there couldn't have been. I just was for some reason unwilling to find one, and like after that, it's become a lot more about stretching those muscles. So no matter what anyone says, making this happen, and mostly I try to do it in a way of like, does it make sense? But it doesn't always need to, because we're just telling this story. Like the rabbit in the hat when we were talking about the director's cut, pulls a second carrot out of the hat in the old Pixar short, and like, why would they have a second? Why wouldn't he have a second carrot? So why wouldn't there be a fucking rug in this factory?
For the viewers, just a real quick sidestep. Em and I recently did like a whole marathon of Pixar shorts, and a few of them only had the director's commentary audio attached to them, and one of those was 2006 or 2007 Presto, the one with the rabbit. Those of you who know. And we watched all of that with its director's commentary, and the big thing that we got from that director's commentary was that there was apparently, according to the director, a major plot hole, which was where did the second carrot come from?
This man said it was a major plot hole.
It was a major plot hole, and both of us were just like, what second carrot? Like,
I can't even believe that was...
He's a magician with real human pockets. Like, where do you think the second carrot came from? He pulled it out of the hat with sleight of hand, like a magician does. Like,
it's just like that for me is exactly. It's like the rug thing. Why would he have a second carrot? Why wouldn't there be a rug? Like it doesn't matter. The story needs this rug at the moment, and why can't there be a rug?
Yeah, if there's not a rug, there better be like a good reason why there's not a rug. And I feel like this was a thing that I said.
Yeah, you said that there should be a sign that says no rugs.
Like a poster, like a no rug flammable with a line through the rug with fire on it poster. Like rugs can't have them. They catch fire and we're on Lava Planet. That's no bueno. You know, and given that, sure, no rugs. But without
it. Since that moment, it's been more of me like trying to flex that muscle and find those things that just make it make sense. It can just make it make sense. Do it and make it make sense. That's kind of what I feel like part of your job is as the DM, is to just make it make sense.
As the DM, when you are, I don't know if this is a thing that you feel when you are actively DMing or when you're listening back through the episodes as you're editing, but have there been moments recently when you've been like, yes, this was a good moment. This was a moment where I told the story. I did the thing. I made it happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's been getting better and better. Like every episode I'm a little more, or every little moment I'm a little more impressed than I was last time about how one of us or all of us are describing what's happening. But also myself, like just going into a little bit more detail every time about what's around so that we can all have somewhat of a closer mental image of this space. Yeah, and then just being more comfortable with the fact that that mental image will never be the exact same. And so you're going to reach for a rug even though I didn't imagine one. But yeah, I mean, just like in the most recent episode that has come out, like it was big. I made an artistic decision to split the episode in two because we got tired of fucking 2.5 hour long episodes, but also because we needed, like, we just had this big like culmination climax fight we needed a goofy goof 'em up, and it felt cool to be able to make that decision. One, do it. It works. We had a goof 'em up hour, and then we had another slightly goof 'em up hour that ended in another tragedy. And so it like to split that up, to do it, and then to get to the end of that tragedy and be like, oh, I'm so happy that I made this decision to put in the goof 'em up hour on its own as a palate cleanser. Even though it would have been 2.5 hours in, like it felt right, and then it did it and it worked, and I was like pleased when I was listening to that episode and the tragedy happened. I was like, I've had time. I can only imagine that the listeners also had time to do that. It felt good as a storytelling moment.
I personally am looking forward to listening to those episodes back to back because I know that they came from the same session.
Sure.
But that's just me. You as the listener, you guys out there, listen to them as they come out. I don't think that there's any particular metrics that make that better for us, but it's probably better for you. Or not. Do what you want. Listen to them all in a bunch. Binge them.
Yeah,
Do
I
it.
mean,
Fuck it. I don't care.
I think that I don't know. There's a million ways that I have listened to long form story podcasts like this. Being that I'll listen to it serially and then I'll go back and binge the whole thing to re-encapsulate the whole arc at once.
So when you listen to other podcasts and you're listening to their storytelling, are there specific elements that you're listening to? Is it the whole sort of scope of the thing? Like, are you listening to NPC choices? Are you listening to plot sort of overarching elements? Are you like, what is it that you're as a storyteller sort of attuned for in the stories that you consume, whether in like podcasts or in television, or like what are you keeping feelers out for to improve your own storytelling?
Yeah, in podcasts, it is a lot more how the story is being told in this medium that I feel like we're just still trying to master. It's so difficult to do these conversations that should happen on top of one another, but still giving each other the space in a recording
it's rough.
It's difficult.
It's rough. That out of person tabletop role playing like over Discord. I know that everyone's doing it, but
it's tough.
It's hard. It's hard.
So listening to how they have that flow, and
lag is real.
Thinking about how to fix those problems with us in our own table, but also listening to just all of it, the way that the characters respond, because that could be an NPC, the way they're responding. I can just say that. I don't know. I'm currently listening to one where the NPCs are a lot less oftentimes they're a lot less important, and I don't know, I think every NPC has their story. Whether we are focusing on it or not is different, but every NPC has a story. They may not have a quest for you, but there's something going on. So I really like to give that, but it's, just because we do it differently, that doesn't mean it's bad or wrong, or that either way is. It's just that has developed slightly differently, but I think it's helped develop my joy of that. And when I make an NPC, when you guys meet Herc the Cheese Man, and while it won't make sense in our story for Herc to ever come back, Herc's life is still happening. We gave him enough breath to have life.
Herc was an NPC for a character who no longer exists in our game.
No, but he had the breath to
Herc,
exist.
I do miss him
when he was there, and I think that
I miss him and his cheese.
That is an interesting thing for me. And just breaking down how other people do it. For TV shows, it's more about story beats and watching a room as like I get hit with a good story beat. I'm like, whoa, that was really cool how they pulled this off or this off, and also seeing how it affects the others in the room has been very helpful. Like, we were sitting down at the barbecue yesterday, and someone had said something and it reminded me of another story, and I was like, holy shit, it would be really cool if we did an arc where this and this happens. And I'm like, oh cool, I'm gonna put that on the back burner for months until it makes sense in my head, and then all of a sudden maybe that'll be my next arc or whatever.
So say that some of our listeners are wanting to tell a story. Either they want to write some sort of serialized fiction, short fiction, or they want to run a tabletop role playing game of their own, and they want to tell sort of a rich story, or some other medium. They want to do some contemporary theater, or whatever. They want to tell a story in their own right. What sort of advice or tips and tricks as a moderately experienced storyteller, what would you advise sort of your less experienced compatriots? How would you guide them?
It's yeah, I mean it's pretty broad. I think with any of these mediums, if it's something that you want to try because you're interested in it, and possibly interested in it even as a storytelling medium, that is to do it and then do it again and do it again and again and again and again and again and again and just keep doing it. And if you find that you aren't enjoying it, find another medium. That is okay. I think a lot of people burn out because they force themselves to do something that they're not enjoying. Um, I know that I was getting that way. Like I think a lot of theater stuff, I was burning myself out because the things that I was loving wasn't the things that I was doing so much of.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like finding this weird split between what was bringing me joy and what was bringing me stress, and how to balance that. And it's now only looking back, hindsight 2020, that it was the storytelling that was bringing that. So yeah, I don't know. You just doing it over and over again. Writing, if writing is your thing, great. If you write 10 pages and realize that you're not necessarily a great writer because you can't come up with the most flowery language, or it only makes sense in your head, hey, that's fine too. But you did a thing and you put it down. Maybe try writing again. Maybe try writing again in 10 years. Maybe try writing again tomorrow. Maybe it's not writing. Maybe it's playing D&D. That's proven huge for me. It began with just wanting to tell a fun fantasy adventure of magic. And then we told a fun fantasy adventure of magic. And then it's like, well, shoot. I still want to play this game because I'm having fun doing it. But I don't just want to tell another fun fantasy adventure of magic that's played out for me at this one moment. So let me try this. What's interesting to me? What relationships are interesting? And then we tried that. And we've done, I don't know, 10 to 12 different kinds of, I would say at this point, campaigns or RPG games, and each one in its own right has shown another thing that I would enjoy exploring.
Each of the stories that we've told have been their own sort of unique, encompassed
Mm-hmm.
story, and we have told quite a few of them, and they have sort of been from marginally to very different,
Yeah.
in their scope, in their different pieces that they pull in to weave the narrative. Um, and I do think it's been increasingly more interesting, more complex, more
Mm-hmm.
fun to be a part of as we have all as a group move forward in our storytelling capabilities.
Yeah, and I think that that's it. You don't want to tell the same story over and over again. You want to develop it, and it each time that you do anything, I think that goes for any of the joys across anything that anyone has brought up, is that the first time you do it will always be worse than the 10th time you do it, because you are just gonna learn and improve. And so finding the medium, I think, is the most important part for storytelling. So I think a lot of people have an imagination but get stuck up in what medium they should be doing. They're like, I'm doing this. I am uh, writing,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm struggling. Well,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's not the medium for this moment. You could still be a writer again in a year down the line, but maybe in this moment you need to be telling a story through D&D or painting or pottery. Like there's a lot of forms of art, and I think that art is a great way to tell stories.
Art is a great way to tell stories. That is a great quote to take home with you, dear listener. Art is a great way to tell stories.
Art is a great way to tell stories.
Doesn't matter what the medium is. If you get roadblocked on one spot, take another. There are an infinite number of directions you can go once you have delved into the great topic that is art.
It's true.
We are sort of closing in. We're sort of nearing the end of our interview. We're not
Yeah.
quite there yet. But we're gonna do sort of a few end of interview questions.
Okay.
You know you've been through high school. You love superlatives. Let's do a couple superlatives. Sort of what was the most fun in the moment experience of storytelling, whether that was sort of a moment within your role playing game running, or a character that you played, or a story that you wrote.
Mm-hmm.
What was the most fun?
I think that it was the which we're almost there in the releases, but it's the reveal of the problem on the station to the table. It was to you first. You got a little ticklings, and that from when you introduced your next character, which comes out soon, to when
True
we left.
MDoes fans will know by now. Hyatt Cola meets some stuff.
Yeah.
He meets some stuff. And that's going to lead into a whole bunch more things. And that
But it's like that chunk of episodes
that was such an exciting moment.
was
Like the whole Hyatt Cola introduction arc really
yeah.
blew the whole world of the like starting town in space, world open. At least
Yeah.
for me, I don't know. I don't know if the rest of the party listened to it, but like I know Lawrence did, and I know that like anyone who did would have gotten a benefit from it, because like we did.
There's a lot
We
that it
got
touches
into
on.
it.
Yeah, and I felt like a lot of the stuff that I guess for those fans that comes out in I don't know a few days I guess after this will come out. There is no that's fine. It comes out at the same time. That's not a big deal. I doubt there's a ton of crossover, save the folks who are already probably aware of what's happening in the story. So
Hey guys, if you listen to this quick hiatus, quick brief moment, if you listen to this podcast, the PureJoy podcast, you should tune in to Dungeons, Drive-ins, and Dice. It's not this at all, but it is these people doing a tabletop RPG, and it's a lot of fun. It is all of us, all of your favorite voices here on the PureJoy network.
there are a few of us, yeah, quite
A few of us, and if M
60% of the group
keeps
at
up
this
his stuff, it'll be all of us at some point.
at some point, yeah.
But if you want to go back and listen to your favorite chaos magician and media consumer, I think that was my topic way back when.
That was
Your favorite of those two people playing role playing games. Go and listen to the Dungeons, Drive-ins, and Dice podcast. We play. I know this is our second very shameless plug, but we play Dungeon World in space.
Yeah, Dungeon World in space.
I play a sequence of deeply sexy characters.
Yeah, deeply differently sexy characters.
Mechanically, let's be very specific. Mechanically sexy characters.
But yeah, I mean that arc is just so good because
so
I had
fun.
from the first episode.
You can
we had
tell
talked
how much work went into that sort of introductory like couple episodes. It was very clear that you had done a lot of work coming into.
It had been the 8 months, I think, leading up to that time that I had been thinking about this character that's going to be introduced and how to do that. And then not only how to do that, but how to edit that. I was thinking 3 months in advance on how I would go about editing this voice, because we've done a small touch of like vocal editing here and there, like comms or certain aliens get it, certain big forces get it, and this felt like a huge force, and so how that's going to come out I had to think about. And so when we were doing it and seeing the look, like, yes, Lawrence's character couldn't be surprised, but watching Lawrence actually experience that and then play a not surprised person was also interesting to see. Like all these little bits and how they were clicking in was big, and then it was so big that we had to have a secondary. There's going to be several episodes of us just talking about it and figuring out how to move on.
Yeah, the
from this big
ramifications,
thing.
the ripples that spread from
And I was
from that.
I felt a little bit of guilt, and I was scared in this moment because I was like, oh no, have I thrown things off the rails? But it wasn't that I had thrown things off the rails, it's that I had done it
You just
exactly like I wanted to do it.
You'd rattled us.
And
Like,
it had
you rattled
impacted
our
you
whole
guys
shit.
as a part of this story.
We had to take
and I
our
was
time and like
pumped.
step back and think about, all right, what do our characters do from here? And if you want to know what happens, what our characters do, tune in. Please subscribe to the Dungeons, Drive-Ins, and Dice podcast. I am most interested in, we've talked a lot about what has made you feel the most joy, the most pleasure from your joy, but you can't sort of reach the mountaintops without going through the valleys.
Fact.
So what has been sort of a struggle for you specifically? What has been more difficult? What have you had to sort of work through to achieve this joy?
So I don't know, if like 8 months of focus and work on a thing that we are only just in maybe 2 episodes we touch on part of the mystery, and I pull it off and I'm so stoked, it would be like the failures in the moment. Like I'm using this has been the most way that I've done any form of storytelling is with the Dungeons, Drive-Ins, and Dice, but like in around Rug episode, just after Rug, I think it's the same episode. That's a pretty big disappointment for me. Is the problem, what is it? The rope problem where everyone is fucking falling out of the back of this ship.
That was a good
landing
moment.
on the rope.
Such a funny moment, though.
It is a Mo, Curly, and Joe slapgag bit that I think is humorous, but
fully
not
unintentional
good
bit of goof.
storytelling. Not good storytelling at all. And it's been moments like that where you have to decide that because we're telling the story, we're not just playing D&D. It's not just win or fail. It's what that means and how that's going to present itself. And so in that moment, failing and not being able to like get my hands back on the reins and like and hoping that one of you guys will make a decision that pulls me out of this fucking hole I'm digging myself into, but that isn't this relationship. And when we play, it's that I have to be digging the hole for you guys to be going deeper.
It's hard for us as players to like sort of help the GM.
Exactly.
Especially, and like this is a gripe that's probably not for the podcast, but like that's I feel like especially a digital thing. Like when you're in person, the DM can be like, hey, real quick, like, does this feel good?
Right.
Like, does this sound okay? Where are we at? Sort of real quick table talk, let's talk this out. But over the digital, that's like you're already sort of running the risk of upsetting the flow of things when you are upsetting the flow of things. Like it's harder.
It was a tough moment, but using that for the following many episodes in what not to do, what hole not to dig myself into, it strengthened another muscle. I mean, all struggles, I think, if you don't let it take you out of the thing, will make you better at that thing in some form or fashion if you can overcome it. Not that all struggles are overcomable or shouldn't be given their time, but just that if you can overcome it, it will teach you something. You will know how to do it better, do it harder, do it longer, whatever that is.
Sort of within that question, real quick, before we get to our next set of questions. You've talked about toning the muscles of your joy, of your storytelling.
Yeah.
What, I don't know if this is drilling too deep, but like what muscle within storytelling do you feel like you have toned the most? What is the most defined muscle you've got right now?
I think it has to be just like the story threads and keeping them alive. I was a big I've been much better at it as this has gone on, but like at the beginning I used to complain a lot about how I would say a lot of things and then forget them. And I do still, and I think that we all do quite a lot when we're in this. We'll pause and be like, what was that was said, and how was I going about this? Okay, I'm back into it. But I forget less threads now because I've made them more woven in. It's not just this one thread, but it's that when you pull it, you can see the paint coming off the fucking wall because it is so deeply ingrained. It affects this and this NPC, and you know them and they know them, and now that's important. Making each thread matter and not putting just like loose superfluous ones out there. I used to just throw paint at the wall and see what stuck, but then that left a bunch of other paint that I had thrown. Right, and now it's
paint on the wall.
It's getting better at just like painting the wall with what you're given, and just like keep that going and
narrowing the margins closer to what we're doing. Sort of,
and getting I think just better at improv overall. Like the pauses during the recordings are shorter for everybody, but including for myself, who is in the moment like trying to build this next set. So, or being willing to ask for a pause, that's a huge
for sure. Being willing to ask for a pause is a big deal.
Like I just need 30 seconds. All right.
It's hard. It's hard to ask for that.
Yeah.
Like I've played the dungeon master role before, and like that's difficult. It's hard to ask for a moment, even though you know that your players are going to be like, oh, sure, fine, cool.
Yeah, I mean, like that moment does not matter, but it is very helpful for you to center yourself, and learning to ask for that has been helpful.
Yeah, way back in college, I used to call for a cigarette break when I needed a moment to figure out what the hell to do. After the shenanigans y'all had pulled.
And that was always a good moment because we would step up, and we three together who were in this moment, or four at some point, were all then chatting in a outside way about this, not as players at the table now, but as if we had just watched this. We would chat about how things were going, and then give, us players would give little shoots onto what we thought could come next. It was really
fun. You got that was a really fun part about the in-person experience, was getting to listen to you guys spitballing as I silently chain smoked and tried to figure out what I was actually going to do. But it was really good to be able to listen to the threads of what you guys were spitballing, like
what we found important,
what you thought was important, what you thought was going to happen next, where you thought, like, what you thought the connections were in that moment. That was all really good stuff.
That is a thing, like, so even deeper into that skill is, I think it's not, so yes, the thread is now ingrained in the story, but it's also about manipulation is the wrong word, but subtle manipulations to get you guys to see it, but not make it like I'm focusing on it, right? Like there's a chip in the wall and blah blah blah, and then someone's like, why is there a chip in the wall? Cool, now it's in your head. And now there's this other thing, and now there's this other thing, and then all of a sudden, once you pull the thread, you realize that it's connected back to the chip in the wall from 10 episodes ago, and that feels like really solid, because you've been curious, and now you know these two puzzles are one puzzle.
Yeah, that moment is really, I mean, it's good in any form of fiction. Like if you're watching sort of if you're watching an A24 TV show or movie or something, there's going to be a moment where you're like, oh, and that moment feels good. Like it's like relieving a cramp in your mind.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'll say that moment feels even better if it's a part of a story that you've been creating. Even if you're not right, when you feel the bits slot into place, even if they're not actually the bits that wind up being the thing, like when it all makes sense, you're just like, ooh, okay, I understand the world now. Let's play in here. We're no longer blindfolded. We're no longer feeling it out. We've taken the blindfold off. Even if we still need some like real good glasses, we can see what's going on now, and that's it's a good feeling. Hell yeah, hell yeah. Okay.
Hard, but worth it to develop.
So difficult.
Yeah.
So difficult. But like when you've got it, oh boy,
Mm-hmm.
it feels so good. Okay, we'll call that there with the superlatives. I think this is the thing I've seen in previous episodes. Say that some of our viewers are starting off in their storytelling journey. They're writing their first bit of short fiction, or they're coming up with some ideas for their first game mastering experience. What sort of advice would you give to them?
I think just like don't let not knowing how to do it hold you back from doing it. Especially in game mastering and playing Dungeons and Dragons, that'll hold almost anyone back that you just don't know how to do it or you're overwhelmed by what's going on. But like, I don't know. It sounds so cheesy, but just search it on YouTube. Like it's the best resource for learning. Someone will have the right way to just tell you the few rules that actually exist in D&D. And then you'll slowly learn the mechanics. You'll slowly learn these things when you start putting yourself around it and ingratiating yourself in it and just playing and failing. And then you'll learn that you had failed and you'll go back and you'll play better next time. Oh shoot, this is how this mechanic works. Oh shoot, these are how these numbers add up. Guess what? It didn't really matter that you did it wrong the first time. You probably still had fun or you struggled a little bit, but you still wanted to come back because you're trying it again. So you'll do it better. If you have, people around you that can teach you, great. But if you can't, like, don't let not having someone to teach you hold you back from attempting to do it.
Don't let not have someone to teach you hold you back. I have to hugely second that, and I will say, huge thing for me, when you are starting out, really, I mean, writing or game mastering or any sort of creative pursuit where you yourself are sort of designating the plot. All of the textbooks, be that the Dungeon Master's Guide or the How to Write a Story books or whatever, are not helpful. They will tell you one way, one phrasing of how to tell a story. And it seems like, more often than not, that phrasing seems to only apply to whoever it was that authored the story. And it doesn't actually help any of you, the consumers, to tell your own stories. And I would say, like Emma said, YouTube is a huge resource, because basically any YouTube video, like telling you something that you might have been able to read out of a book, is basically a rephrasing, a retelling of the points that you have gotten from the book. And those points may have been phrased in a way that will be easier for you to receive. So just because the book is confusing and unhelpful, don't let that stop you. There are many, many resources, and each different resource, even if all of the resources, even if you get 5 different resources that say, start here, this is how you tell the story, they will all be phrased in a different way, and you should poke at each of them until you find one that seems to speak your language. And let that sort of be your North Star that guides you through this the storytelling process.
Yeah, I mean, just do it.
Practice.
You can't find whatever voice that you have in this medium without doing it and developing that voice and like developing how you want to use it and in what way. Like my first 6-page story would be, if I had it, I could rewrite it now and make it 30 pages because of my experience, and I've read more books and I've written more things and I know how to write and blah blah blah. But like, that only is because I now have 20 more years of life behind me, because I have written over and over and over and over again. Just do it. Continue to do it. Learn from your failures and don't let them kick you out of doing it. Yeah.
Okay. One last question before we sort of get to the very end of our episode today. You've given us a lot of advice, sort of for those starting out, for those sort of in the midst of their storytelling process. What goals do you have, sort of, as you progress in your storytelling? What is something that you're shooting for, be it character interaction or narrative development, or like what's a goal that you have that you're trying to see happen within the next bit of your storytelling career?
An ending. A lot of my, I mean, even just like talking about it, a lot of my storytelling over the past has been about the beginnings of stories, right? Like
Certainly.
first grade, it was a chapter one or a book one, but not a story. I mean, a lot of my better writings were one acts. They were a chunk of a wider
Mm-hmm.
story that you have to now imagine as an audience member. And then with this, like, sure, very soon for the listeners, we will have pulled off this really cool moment, this big wow moment, and then we'll break that down and we'll begin to move on from it and like what that means. But that's still not the end. That's really cool, but now it's a challenge to learn how to, while doing it, not let the story die down and still come to a conclusion that makes us like okay with just with moving on to another game. You know what I mean? I don't want it to be us to move on because we have this plan. I want it to be us moving on. We're prepared to move on when the story finds its conclusion, which, again, it's like, it's just how to make that happen and that feel like a conclusion, because I've not been much one for ending things. I get about halfway through and then something distracts me or
Okay.
whatever.
Okay.
So learning how to end and then learning how to make these big narrative swings in the moment.
Hmm.
Because a lot of like the big, like this big narrative swing coming up has been something that has been peppered, but sometimes it is a pop that you don't expect, but it is huge and is impactful.
Pivots are hard.
It's hard, but I want to learn how to at least use it, not to abuse it, but to be able to utilize it.
Certainly. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your joy with us, Em. Before we go, I know that my first episode, I prodded you to introduce small joys to the start of your episode.
That's been consistent since
you have
episode
you've kept
3.
that going. I'm really I'm always stoked to hear the small joys. So I'm gonna prod you. I don't expect this one to
to stick.
but I'm gonna prod it because I am in charge and I am the captain now.
Sure.
Let's real quick, let's manifest a joy. Like, what is a joy that you'd like to see, like that you'd like to experience in the coming, let's say, year, up to a year, sort of the months ahead?
Like something I'm looking forward to?
Yeah, something you're looking forward to or something you'd like to realize. What is a joy that you would like to manifest, that you'd like to visualize for yourself in the near future?
Okay, just to continue spitballing on, I think, where we want our answers to land. I feel like, again, a thing I want to manifest is like, I don't know if there's a better word to say it, but just like a savings. I'm very excited to manifest savings.
To be able to set aside some dough for the future. Yeah,
I think it's the first time ever. I think I've always said that it's coming. It's this next block. It's this next thing that will be the thing that I'm finally set up for. But I mean, looking back, I can see how that wasn't the case, or how I didn't do proper saving or spending after that to keep that being the case. But I think that I'm at a point where like it might happen. I don't know. Like there's nothing huge on the horizons, and all of the vacations or whatever trips coming up, I'm like, I've been prepared for, so it's not gonna like affect anything. So I just like, I don't know, just like finding that like monetary security because of hard work and because of due diligence of my own accounts, and yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. If that is a good joy to manifest.
I'll say, I don't know about good or bad, but it's a very adult joy. And I'm here for it. That's
I'm gonna find joy in not having that stress right on my shoulders.
Adult joy right there is the realization of fiscal responsibility.
Yeah,
that's solid. That's
making it happen.
That's, I gotta say, way better than I've got.
That's cool. What joy would you like to realize?
Here's the thing: is that in my mind I had beekeeping. But
well,
you know what?
This was spitballing when I went
here's
into
the thing is that when I was talking to you about it, I said within a year, and there is here, dear listener, I will say it right now. No way.
There's no way that in
in 1 year, on May 29th, 2024, that Gabe Stringer will be a beekeeper. That just won't happen.
1 year in the future, the episode will be titled "Beekeeping with Gabe Stringer."
Oh, I see. I will try.
See, that's what I
will try. I will try and manifest.
It wanted to be like something we wanted to try or do.
I mean, yeah, like if we want to extend it further, I would love to see manifesting a joy be. This is a joy that I would love to see in the future. Like for me, beekeeping feels really in line with manifesting a joy. Is a thing that you think that you would have joy in, or had like a very brief sort of winkle of joy in the past, but you want to really delve into at some point, like that sort of like something that sort of is not yet part of who you are, but is something that, you know, for me beekeeping, I kept bees. I helped keep bees. I did not keep any bees. I helped tangentially my senior year of high school, and it was some of the most fun that I've ever had. I loved beekeeping. I got to taste honey from different kinds of plants, and I've always wanted to keep bees since then, to like try keeping bees sort of localized on different plants, on different varietals of honey. I reread a beekeeping book today, and I think that the honey that I tried way back when, that I thought was like exquisite and amazing, might have actually been honeydew honey, like the vines that you see. Like I think the honey from them might have been, when I was beekeeping, I tasted some like really dark, really rich honey that, like, when we were spinning it out, was only a certain portion of one sort of frame of honey. And we tried just these little dark sections, and it was the most flavorful, the most interesting and complex and delicious honey that I had ever had, and I've never had it again. And the person we were with was like, I think it's from pine trees, but after reading this book, I think it's from honeysuckle. But we'll find out someday when I become a beekeeper. Someday.
And a more wondrous
manifesting
joy is
joy,
one that I think I would be becoming a published TTRPG author of some kind.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I think that that's like, with all the work we've been doing and the background work that I was doing to like keep sheets and everything up to date, like I don't know how I would do it, because some of this is like directly plagiarized for our own campaign, and some of it, you know, because I wasn't selling it, so I'll have to do some edits and stuff, but like is finding a way to like,
you're close to that though. You're not
make a little money off of
I've worked with you on
that's cool.
on TTRPG creation. Like you're like, I would say that you are closer to publishing than you are to plagiarism on a lot of the stuff that I have seen you create. Like you're not quite there. Like there may be, you know, snippets.
I would say like
30%
of your character is copy and pasted, but it only made sense to copy and paste it because the flavor of everything else I had brought in changed the flavor of that.
Exactly.
But I still I need to go back and not make that a copy and paste. It has to be in my own words. which is fine. Like my idea is now
But you're
different than the thing
you're
they gave.
close to that. Like if that was a focus, if that was a thing that you really wanted to manifest, I could definitely see you doing that.
Yeah.
Like by May 29th, 2024, we could definitely see, hey, listeners, be on the lookout
Drive
for
RPG. We have no idea what it'll be.
M does TTRPG publishing. The vlog.
The vlog. Yeah, that's something I think I would like to manifest, is attempting to publish that or get it into a publishable form.
Awesome. That's really cool to hear.
It's neat.
I think that about wraps it up for us this evening. I would like to thank you, Em, for joining me here on the PureJoy podcast, sharing your joy with me and all of you all. I would like to thank MioWnize and Merda for their intro and transition themes. I would like to thank anyone else that I have forgotten to thank as the temporary interim host for this one episode. I would like to thank you all, the listeners, for being our rock and foundation, for enjoying this podcast. I know that I am one of you and you are one of me, and so we together, us, will listen and enjoy this podcast and give Em all of our very special thoughts. Thank you, Em. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you next time.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.